We are three generations of women living under one roof. My older sister took me in by force and my mother caught up with us on the road. I was born and raised in America in a family where three completely different generations lived under one roof. My great-grandmother Rosa, whose roots go back to the old world, my mother Sarah, and me Emily, a self-willed 20-year-old girl with modern views on life. From childhood I felt how our beliefs and values often diverged like streams flowing in different directions. Great-grandmother Rosa, who survived the horrors of World War II, was the keeper of traditions and conservative views. At every opportunity she instilled in us with my mother the importance of family values, modesty and diligence. My mother, on the other hand, a peer of the sexual revolution and the civil rights movement, was drawn to freedom of self-expression and liberal ideas. She dreamed that I would develop my talents, creative abilities, and never be afraid to go against the system if it contradicted my true desires. As for me, a child of the new era, I imbibed the values of individualism, independence and self-realization. With my mother's milk I dreamed of travel, new horizons, and strove to break out of the narrow confines of the familiar way of life to chart my own life path. Our family conversations often grew into heated debates where each of us defended her point of view to the last. Great-grandmother Rosa, a person of the old school, was convinced that it was better to stick to time-tested traditions and foundations. She often criticized my choice of clothing, calling it too provocative and indecent for a decent girl. Mom, on the contrary, always stood up for me, saying that I had every right to express myself and was not obliged to follow the strict norms of previous generations. Quarrels often flared up between them where old grievances surfaced. Great-grandmother reproached Mom for spoiling her too much in childhood, not instilling a sense of hard work and obedience. As for me, I felt torn by these contradictions. On the one hand, I valued traditions and wanted to maintain close relationships with my great-grandmother, but on the other hand, the craving for freedom, independence and modern values was too strong. Sometimes I answered my great-grandmother with insolence, for which I invariably received lectures from both of them. Quarrels often ended with one of us running to her room in tears, slamming the door shut. Silence hung in the air like a thundercloud, but after a while one of us would take the first step, suggesting we talk and try to make amends with each other. Then we would gather in the kitchen over a cup of strong coffee or fragrant tea and try to find a compromise. It was not easy, for our value systems differed so much, but over time we learned, if not always to reach an agreement, at least to listen to and respect each other's opinions. I understood that my great-grandmother sincerely wished me well, trying to instill the qualities that were valued in her time, and Mom, on the contrary, wanted to protect me from the excessive restrictions that she herself had to experience. Ultimately, we realized that we were all parts of one whole and inseparable family, and no matter how much our views might diverge at times, unconditional love and care for each other should be paramount. Things were not going well at school either. I could never fit in with my classmates and often became the target of mockery and bullying. I was mocked for my unconventional appearance, rock-style clothing, and independent nature. Some were biased against me, considering me too much of a show-off because of my privileged family background. After another difficult day at school, I would come home in a depressed state. I so wanted to find understanding and solace from my loved ones, but instead, I often witnessed yet another confrontation between my mother and great-grandmother. Arguments often flared up over seemingly trivial matters. My great-grandmother could criticize my mother's choice of work outfit, calling it indecent for a married woman, or she could express disapproval of her late returns from corporate events. My mother did not let it slide, accusing my great-grandmother of being too fixated on outdated norms. At such moments, I wanted to sink through the ground with shame and vexation. It seemed that my loved ones completely failed to notice the distressed state I was in. After another day of bullying at school, they were so absorbed in their own disagreements that they did not see how I needed their support and consolation more than anything. Sometimes I tried to get their attention and tell them about my problems, but they only brushed me off, advising me not to pay attention to the silly antics of my peers, or to stay away from bad company. It was obvious that neither my great-grandmother nor my mother fully understood how serious bullying and loneliness could be during the school years. I found solace only in my interactions with my only friend, Christina. She was my peer and understood me like no one else. Christina also felt like an outcast at our school because of her unconventional style of dress and bright purple hair. We quickly found a common language, realizing that our similar worldviews and passion for music bonded us far more than any other differences. After school, we would spend hours sitting in the nearest cafe, sipping hot chocolate and sharing secrets, dreams, and grievances with each other. Christina was that rare soul who could listen and give valuable advice without judgment. She never questioned my views or aspiration but only supported me and instilled confidence in myself. We often discussed the disagreements in my family and the difficult relationships between my great-grandmother, mother, and me. Christina helped me look at the situation from a different perspective and understand that each generation is guided by its life experiences and values formed in a certain era, and although this sometimes gave rise to quarrels and disagreements, deep down we all loved each other and wanted the best. Christina said that such conflicts between generations were a common occurrence, and the best thing I could do was to learn to listen to each side, find the golden mean, and go my own way, not rejecting traditions outright, but also not giving up my own beliefs. In those moments when the heartache from school bullying and family quarrels became unbearable, Christina and I would escape to the river on the outskirts of town. There, away from all problems and troubles, in the quiet haven of nature, we allowed ourselves to be truly free. We let our hair down, shouted into the boundless sky, and dreamed of the day when we would leave this oppressive place and gain true independence. Dreams of the future gave us strength and did not allow us to break under the weight of cruel reality. My interactions with Christina were a breath of fresh air for me. In her company, I felt accepted and understood for who I was, without any extra expectations or masks. She was not just a good friend but a truly close person whom I trusted with my most intimate experiences and thoughts, and for this, I was infinitely grateful to fate for bringing us together during this difficult time of growing up. During those periods when Christina went away for summer vacations to her grandmother's in Utah, I felt completely lost and lonely. My friend often shared with me her experiences related to these trips. Just like in my family, different views and values of several generations clashed in Christina's home. Her grandmother was a woman of the old school, adhering to strict moral principles and a conservative lifestyle. She often criticized her granddaughter's free-spirited nature and bright style, condemning her choice of clothing and rock music interests. Christina recounted how during these summer visits she had to carefully watch her behavior in order not to provoke another conflict. Even light makeup or a provocative t-shirt could become grounds for reprimands from her strict grandmother. Sometimes arguments reached extremes, and Christina had to sleep in a tent in the yard to avoid quarrels. But no matter how difficult it was, she tried to maintain patience and respect for her elders, understanding that her grandmother only wanted the best for her, albeit guided by outdated norms. At such moments, I acutely felt that Christina and I were two kindred souls, bound by the shared life experience of overcoming generational conflict. When she returned to the city after another trip, we would discuss this delicate topic again and again, not judging, but only trying to understand the motives of all sides. Christina always emphasized the importance of showing respect for elders, despite disagreements in views. In her opinion, by abruptly severing ties with the traditions and beliefs of past generations, we lost something valuable, that moral support and wisdom that had shaped our society for centuries. At the same time, she said that every person has the right to choose their own life path, not following outdated norms. The main thing is to do it with dignity and respect for those whose views differ from your own. In my family, there is also an older sister, Sarah. She is 26 years old. She lives with her boyfriend in a suburb of New York, renting her own apartment. Sarah used to come home to us often, but lately her visits have become less frequent. The reason for this was the strained relationship with my mother due to their disagreements in views on life. Despite this, I try to maintain close ties with my older sister. We regularly call each other and meet up whenever we have free time. Sarah has always been an advisor and support for me in difficult situations. Her life experience and more mature view of things helps me soberly assess conflicts with my great-grandmother and mother, finding the right balance between respect for traditions and the desire for independence. Sarah perfectly understands what I'm going through, because once she was in my shoes. She recounts how in her youth she too suffered from criticism from her great-grandmother for her craving for self-expression and independence, but over time, Sarah learned to compromise, maintaining respect for her elders while at the same time defending her right to her own life path. Communicating with my sister instills confidence in me that someday I too will be able to find harmony between different values and resolve the contradictions within the family. Her support means a lot to me during these difficult years of growing up. Soon there was a big celebration planned in our family, and we all were supposed to gather around the common table. Such meetings always became a test of strength for our relationships. The clash of different views and values often led to quarrels and squabbles. Sarah, my older sister, was also planning to come to the family holiday, and not alone, but with her boyfriend David. It was the first time her life companion was supposed to join our family celebration. Great-grandma was wary of this, as she still tended to judge by old standards, when meeting a potential son-in-law's relatives was only possible after engagement. However, it was decided to compromise for the sake of family peace. After all, one of the main traditions followed by our family was respect and close ties between relatives of different generations. Therefore, it was important to find common ground despite differences in views. When my older sister Sarah arrived at the family holiday with her boyfriend David, she literally radiated happiness. It was immediately clear that she and David were deeply in love and enjoying every moment together. It couldn't but make me happy, as my sister deserved true feminine happiness after all the trouble she had to endure because of family conflicts. At first, everything was going splendidly. Mom prepared a variety of delightful dishes, the table was overflowing with delicacies. Even great-grandma, usually a strict adherent of traditions, relaxed and allowed herself to have some fun. It seemed that on this day we were truly one big, happy family without resentments and quarrels. However, as the evening approached, something went wrong. I don't remember exactly what sparked the argument, whether it was due to differences in beliefs or because of an innocent joke that someone took too literally. But as tensions began to rise, it was like a snowball effect. Great-grandma made a critical remark about David, considering his behavior inappropriate. David, in turn, defensively retorted, and Mom immediately came to the defense of her future son-in-law. An argument ensued, in which various grievances and disagreements in views accumulated over the years were involved from all sides. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control. No one paid attention to my attempts to calm them down anymore. Sarah burst into tears and demanded that David leave with her right away. Watching what was happening, I felt the familiar pain from family quarrels engulfing me with renewed force, and then Sarah unexpectedly hugged me tightly and whispered, "Come with me, Emily, enough of breathing this poison." I was too stunned to respond, but as my sister pulled me towards the exit, I obediently followed her, rejoicing at the opportunity to leave this battlefield. So I found myself in a small cozy town near New York, in Sarah and David's apartment. On the one hand, I felt immensely guilty for leaving Mom and great-grandma behind. But on the other hand, I felt incredible relief from temporarily getting rid of these eternal troubles. I don't know how my life will unfold at such a young age. Will I ever reconcile the values of different generations or choose a completely different path? For now, I just enjoy the peace and await a meeting with my best friend Christina to discuss the recent events. And then I'll return to school to continue the struggle with the difficulties of everyday life. That family holiday will forever remain in my memory as a nightmare. When Sarah pulled me towards the exit, leaving behind the escalating quarrel, I simply followed her automatically, rejoicing at the opportunity to escape from this hell. However, as soon as we stepped outside and got into David's car, we heard screeching tires. It was my mom who jumped out and literally dashed after us, chasing us in her car. David silently started the car and tried to break away, but Mom didn't give up, apparently perceiving everything as the abduction of her beloved daughter. A real chase began through the night streets. David skillfully maneuvered between streams of cars. Mom relentlessly followed us, ignoring all the rules. Occasionally, she tried to overtake our car and block the road, forcing us to stop. Once she even tried to block our path by jumping out of the car, but David managed to avoid her at the last moment. I was torn between Sarah and David, not knowing what to think. On the one hand, I desperately didn't want to return to that poisonous atmosphere of quarrels and discord, but on the other hand, through my eyes, Mom behaved as if she were inadequate, as if I were her property, not an independent person with the right to control my own life. At some point, David turned onto the highway leading out of town, and for several intense kilometers, we simply raced at insane speed along the nighttime road, getting further and further away from the chase. Finally, my mom's car fell behind somewhere in the night, and we were able to catch our breath. Sarah hugged me and quietly said, "I'm sorry for dragging you into this madness. But believe me, it will be better for everyone. You should determine your own future, not be at someone's mercy." David silently nodded, keeping his gaze fixed on the road. That night, when we reached their apartment, I couldn't sleep for a long time, reliving what had happened. The image of my mother, fiercely pursuing us, didn't leave my mind. I understood that she loved me, but her way of loving was painfully twisted. She held on to me so tightly that she almost destroyed me altogether. Her views on life and upbringing clashed with my own, and more than ever, I realized, I needed space to grow and find my own path, away from the toxic influence of my relatives. Perhaps, with time, we could reconcile, but everyone needed time to cool off and acknowledge their mistakes. After that crazy night chase, Emily's life changed dramatically. The court, reviewing the incident where her mother attempted to abduct her own daughter, employing dangerous driving and posing a threat to life, decided to temporarily revoke her parental rights. Emily was ordered to move in with her older sister Sarah and her boyfriend David, who became her guardians. It was a very challenging ordeal for everyone, but after the nightmare she had been through, the girl needed stability and safety. Parallel to this, Emily was transferred to a new school in New York. Parting with her best friend Christina was not easy, but the new environment helped Emily start afresh, away from past traumas and toxic atmosphere in Sarah and David's family. Emily found understanding and support. They didn't try to impose their rules or beliefs on her, but rather created a safe space for personal growth. For the first time in a long while, the girl felt like she could breathe freely. Of course, the rift with her mother and great-grandmother was painful, but with the help of her sister and an experienced psychologist, Emily gradually learned to let go of the past and establish healthy personal boundaries in relationships. After a year, her mother underwent therapy and proved to the court that she had changed her toxic behavior patterns. They managed to restore communication based on mutual respect. Emily learned to accept her mother's love without allowing her to control her life in the new school. Emily formed friendships with peers who shared her interests and views. Immersed in her studies and creativity, the girl found harmony and self-confidence. The experience of overcoming difficulties tempered her character. After a year, her mother underwent therapy and proved to the court that she had changed her toxic behavior patterns. They managed to restore communication based on mutual respect. Emily learned to accept her mother's love without allowing her to control her life. In the new school, Emily formed friendships with peers who shared her interests and views. Immersed in her studies and creativity, the girl found harmony and self-confidence. The experience of overcoming difficulties tempered her character. Reconciliation with different branches of the family, generations, and their values was a long but constructive process. Emily learned to appreciate traditions and the advice of her elders without giving up her own independence. Her life path finally straightened out, pointing towards self-realization, freedom, and personal happiness.